Welcome to the Wheats on Your Mind podcast. My name is Aaron Harries. Wheats on Your Mind is brought to you by the Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Our guest on this episode is Julia Dogan. Julia is the interim department head for the Department of Grain Science and Industry at Kansas State University. Dr. Dogan is also the GM Ross Agricultural Endowment Professor and the undergraduate chair and teaching coordinator. Dr. Dogan received her PhD in food engineering from the Middle East Technical University in Turkey. She joined the Department of Grain Science and Industry faculty in 2006 and has been interim department head since July of 2022. I'm joined on this episode by our CEO of Kansas Wheat, Justin Gilpin, and Julia Dogan. Julia, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So it's a very exciting time, busy time for the Department of Grain Science and Industry at K-State. There's a lot we can talk about this morning, but I think for listeners' sakes, tell us a little bit about your background, how you came from Turkey to the United States and ended up in the middle of the United States.
So I wonder whether you want to hear about the long story, but I want to tell actually how this helps me in my teaching, for instance. Again, I guess the short story, I didn't know that I would be coming. And this is exactly the talk that I do with my students when they say, as if, they know everything about their lives. And I tell them, you never know where the life is going to take you. So my story, I earned everything back in Turkey in food engineering. And I had a scholarship from World Bank in 2000. And I was here for 9 months in Rutgers University, New Jersey. And it was my first introduction to United States as a visiting scientist. So I went back, and there was an email one night asking for me to come back as a postdoc. And I said, okay. So I didn't even double think. It was a decision that we made as a family and moved in 2 weeks to the United States. So we were very adventurous, probably. So then one thing, brought other, and after 3 years of, working as a non-tenure track faculty in Rutgers University, I had an opportunity to apply for a milling position in grain science, which I did, and they invited for interview. I got the job offer, and everything went well from there on. I didn't know, and life brought me, and I'm so happy that, I happened to cross my ways with the Kansas State University and the Grain Science Department. And last 17, almost 18 years, I have been being faculty here and enjoying every moment.
Oh, we're happy to have you here. And your husband also teaches in the department, right?
Exactly. He was also, we were a double hire, and so he was hired as an instructor, and he's still teaching. Actually, he's teaching almost quarter of the milling, curriculum. So as a mechanical engineer, he was able to take over after Dr. Huck and start teaching AutoCAD, plant design, and electricity. Those kind of courses requiring some engineering background that you can teach to non-engineers to the level that they need to know. So that's what he's doing.
You've seen a lot of exciting things in the time you've been here at K-State. I mean, we have a new flour mill, the Hal Ross flour mill that was built, a great teaching and research facility. But there are bigger things on the horizon, much bigger things on the horizon. The Global Center for Grain and Food Innovation, which is a project we've talked about before on this podcast, that essentially is going to be the new home for grain science and industry. Tell us about that project.
That's really, really exciting. July 1st last year, I still remember very clearly. President Lincoln called the culture of leadership and also the prospective interim department heads to a meeting to give us a kickoff. And it was the first time I heard about this initiation of the project. And it was, again, even before I was hired as the interim head. So from day one, this has been the biggest project for me that I have been enjoying working in every step of it. So excitement is obviously, Schellenberger Hall is our home and our legacy. But things from the infrastructure perspective are not getting any better over years. And we are having difficulties with this aging infrastructure and facilities and related problems in the department, in the building. So this project is, yes, a brand new building for us, but more importantly, a great opportunity to grow our program and to have more visibility and attraction to future students, and create a place where the young prospective students, young generation, can see themselves coming and spending 4 years with us to earn their degree, and also interact with the programs surrounding us in the new building, so that they can understand and appreciate the value of interdisciplinary work. So we are very excited about this building for many reasons, but especially from the fact that it's going to be a hub or attraction for the students to come and explore with us further.
Yeah, so Justin was a graduate of the Grain Science Industry Department. Justin, what do you think a center like this is going to mean for recruiting students to grain science and industry?
Well, Aaron, I think it's really exciting. And as Dr. Dogan said, under President Linton's vision and leadership and Dr. Dean Minton with the College of Ag, there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon. Now, it's great having Dr. Dogan with us this morning on the podcast. I did graduate from milling science and at K-State, but I also have the opportunity to serve as adjunct faculty. So technically, Dr. Dogan's one of my bosses. I've got a lot of bosses, and so it's great to have her here, and we're fortunate to have her in this capacity and working with students right now. But the history of the Kansas wheat with the Department of Grain Science goes back so far, and Dr. Dogan mentioned the opportunity that exists with the new center, but the real need for the new center because of Schellenberger Hall. It's reached kind of the end of the later season in its life. If you think about Schellenberger Hall, Dr. Schellenberger was actually one of the first department heads of grain science when it became Department of Grain Science and Milling, and he actually was one of the individuals that worked with the state legislature to help work for the Kansas Wheat Commission, the Wheat Act, getting it started up. Dr. Schellenberger had the opportunity on one of the first wheat sales that went to Russia in the early 1960s. He actually was at the port of Odessa when that hard red winter wheat vessel unloaded. And so that long history with the Department of Grain Science is really tied to Kansas wheat and Kansas wheat farmers. So having Dr. Dogan here today, and then as we work together, looking forward to that future with the new center. Not only is it going to be a good student experience, but expanding that industry experience, and one that all stakeholders can really rally behind. So appreciate your work on that, Dr. Dogan. And again, as one of my bosses, I hope I'm doing okay this morning.
So, Dr. Dogan, is there a plan to kind of maybe move that name Schellenberger in some part to the new center?
Personally, I have been I'm working on it from day one. What I'm envisioning, at least one of those large conference rooms or a space that will be open to large gatherings and meetings, needs to be named after Schellenberger. And of course, some of those decisions, or most of those decisions along the lines, are not necessarily, at my capacity. I may not be able to make the final call. But yes, one thing that I can promise, we need to think about how to keep that legacy and how to keep Dr. Schellenberger's name in the new building. If not for the naming the entire building, which is probably not very likely to happen, but at least a space that can remind our legacy and our history has to be created, and this is what we are working on.
So let's talk about the actual physical structure of the new facility in terms of classroom space and laboratory space for the Grain Science Department specifically. What is that going to look like?
This new building, for those individuals who doesn't know much about the project, is actually there is a brand new structure which will be housed which will be located between Cole Hall and Weber, and those two buildings will be connected to the new structure. So one of those connections is what we are envisioning as a student center. So that in that neck, as we call, there will be a center for welcoming the students and some student services and recruitment services to happen. And on the second floor of the same section of the building, there will be two brand new classrooms, which intend to be replacing, what we have in the Schellenberger Hall 301 and 311. Those are the most, maybe the iconic, classrooms that people will remember if they happen to pass through our programs and the building in the past. So there will be at least, two new classrooms replacing that. And there is a brand new large auditorium in the same building. And between the milling lab and the baking lab, we would have a dedicated classroom where we can actually help the students to get the best out of those 6-hour labs when they do the milling and baking labs. So there are, many classrooms that's going to happen in the new building, if not equal, probably better than what we have in this existing structure. And speaking about those, I don't know if you didn't ask yet, but we also have the POM lab, housed on the first floor, and the bakery science lab housed on the first floor, which are basically going to be our main concentration area for the teaching activities in the new building.
Yeah, the baking lab, very badly needed, and I've seen some renderings of those drawings. It looks like it's going to be kind of open windows so people walking by can observe and learn while the students are learning, which I think is a nice feature. On
the first floor, almost every single corner will have those large windows that the visitors or the students, in the program, in the building, can see what's happening on a daily basis. That's going to hopefully create curiosity. If a student, let's say, passing through the building just for the sake of grabbing, some dairy bar products from the first floor corner, as they walk through and visit in the building, they will be able to observe those operations happening in a given day, and hopefully wondering about what is it and want to learn more about it. So we want to not only tell about the program, but also show just in time, what exactly it means by, having those opportunities to look into the existing, lab operations and teaching operations happening in a given day.
Yeah, so the Department of Grain Science, Aaron, just to take a step back, is probably one of the best kept secrets that we have at Kansas State University. In that same vein, it's probably the one secret that we need to be talking about a lot more. This facility, this new facility, will certainly elevate that visibility of the department, not just to students and other faculty, but then also the industry. But if Dr. Dogan, maybe just take a step back and explain a little bit about what the Department of Grain Science is, what makes it so unique to the United States, and the fact that K-State's the only university to have the Department of Grain Science, and what that really means to the industry and to students.
So grain science, if you want to really summarize our uniqueness, first of all, we are the one-of-a-kind program focused on milling and baking and feed. And as a focus area in College of Ag in general, we have 2 different paths for students to take. And most programs are focused on what's called production agriculture. Grain science is actually handling what happens after the field level. So our approaches in all 3 majors, in milling, baking, or feed, is basically what we can summarize as farm to fork approach. So in our program, what we teach, how you can take a raw material, in milling, for instance, which happens to be wheat, and then take that raw material into the next value-added version of the product. So basically understand what it takes to transform that raw material from a commodity into some more value-added product. And in bakery science, it becomes, the commodity becomes the flour, which is the end product for millers. Then, bakery science teaches how to do the transformational or the formulation changes to make the raw material turn into something that we all see in the grocery aisles as the baked products. So our focus in general in grain science is understanding the processes, understanding specific equipment, the flow diagrams of the processes, how to improve that process to make it more valued, economically valuable, but also look into how to create that final product to the best quality to serve the best nutritional needs or shelf life, whatever needed by the industry. So we try to understand, or teach the students to understand what it takes to see that integrated approaches from, once again, farm level to the end user level. So why it is unique? Again, there is no other program around the world allowing to earn a 4-year degree in those designated areas. And because of our history, which is now, I believe it's our 112th year, because of our history and because of the fact that from day one we have great connections with the industry, our alumni now are holding positions in very key positions around the industry, and they never lose their connections with us. So because of this close-knit network and the interest in the success of the program, we have been benefiting from these relationships and striving for something better and bigger every day.
So yeah, one of the strongest recruiting tools for students when they're coming in is that draw from the industry, because right now it's a 100% job placement across the fields, internship opportunities, and trying to go out and recruit those students about the opportunities of the uniqueness of the department, how they can, if they don't have to have a strong agricultural background to go into milling or baking or feed. If they have interest in food production and feeding people and processing and science and mathematics, it's all of those things combined that can create an opportunity for career pathways out of grain science. And I know that 100% job placement, Aaron, that was kind of key for me when I chose grain science. And so that was even a guy like me could get a job.
At the time you and I were in school, 100% job placement was really not on the table for a lot of things at that point in time. So given that back then and now, if you go to grain science, you graduate, you're going to get a job, and it's going to be a high-paying job. That makes it pretty unique.
If I really pretend that I'm talking to a prospective student and a parent visiting with me today, I want to highlight uniqueness of the department along those lines. So this is a program very fulfilling, since eventually what you learn and what you contribute after graduation is very philanthropic and is very fulfilling, since you are an important part of feeding the future, feeding the population, that we know that is always important. And our program is also, we talk about 100% placement. That's true, but we also have other great experiential opportunities. Throughout their education, students are able to, secure internships if they want, from their freshman summer to all the way to the graduation every summer. And for that, they don't even have to seek for opportunities out there. Most programs, or the students in other programs, they have to go out and look for the companies, look for the opportunities, and externally search all those information available, and finally find a place, apply, and hopefully get a placement. But in our case, we are so lucky and fortunate to have all of our industry partners coming to campus. Typically, in my time here, which seems to be very routine, every year from September to October, for instance, we have minimum 25-30 companies visiting with us, in such a way that some days we have more than one, sometimes up to 3-4 companies at the same time on campus. We are sometimes having hard time to even find 4 different classrooms or the meeting spaces for them to accommodate their visit. So when they come, they introduce their company activities and background information on a social setting. So students are able to go to that low risk, very friendly meetings, to get to know the key individuals from that companies and be able to understand what they are looking for. So after that social night, typically we call them industry nights, they are having a chance to interview with them by filling into this request for interview appointments and the plans that we prepare. So what happens is, even as a freshman, let's say you start in September, in few weeks into your career as a student, you have the opportunity to go ahead and have a full-fledged real interview with a real industry partner and understand what it takes to be employed by them. So even if the student is not landing any scholarship or internship right away, through that experience they understand how to prepare for the next time around and be prepared for the things like that come to their way. So that's another piece about the program. So scholarships are also very unique to our program, because of the industry support. Every year, yes, those numbers may be slightly different, but I can tell every year is in an average, we have $250,000 scholarship available, and we have a mechanism to decide the right student to receive the right kind of scholarship. So that is really makes the program very strong for us. Another piece is about the student clubs. Every major has their dedicated student clubs. which is another way for students to understand or start exercising, forming professional networks and connecting with the industry, since in the student clubs have many opportunities to make those engagements to happen. So that's also very unique to our program, that is making this program one of the top choices for them once they come.
Well, yeah, so there is great demand and pull from the industry side. So it's just a matter of getting those students into the program, into those different degree areas. This global center has got to be a great recruiting tool in that sense. So the timeline is such that freshmen in grain science right now will be in that new global center. Is that correct? Looking at 2026, 2027?
Yes, on their very last year, they will be able to enjoy the brand new building.
Yeah,
especially if they're on a pathway like you and I were in college.
The extended plan.
Yeah. If they're super seniors, they can enjoy it even longer.
Super seniors, great term for that. And I guess the department also has a new recruiter now. Tell us about him.
Yeah, that's also very unique in College of Ag. I believe we are the only department currently having a dedicated recruiter. So that was a needed position for us, and we were happy to fill it this year in April. So we have a recruiter by the name Casey Doyle, and he joined us from another university, actually conducting similar tasks in his former job. So with his help, but also we have a recruitment committee formed by key individuals, key faculty members from each major, working all together. So we have several, new initiatives or the efforts that we put together, this strategic plan for recruitment.
We should mention, too, that not only Kansas kids, but I believe there is in-state tuition reciprocity with some other states. Is that correct?
True. There has been actually small programs with the surrounding states or neighbor states to attract those students as an in-state student. But what happened lately is even bigger than that. So university actually established a new scholarship structure based on the high school success. So there is a rubric for the high school GPAs. If the student is having a high school GPA higher than 3.9, no matter where they are, any state, any country, even internationally, as long as they have a certain high school success satisfied based on the GPA, they are now considered as in-state. Even if they're not having a GPA 3.9, there is still some percent reduction or benefit or offset actually between the in-state and out-of-state rates based on their lower GPAs. So if they are between 3.9 to 3.25 and 3.9 GPA, we have a rubric which defines certain amount of percent reduction to offset the difference between the in-state and out-of-state tuition. And once again, if they have 3.9 and above, they are automatically considered as an in-state student, which is a great financial help for the students and the parents who are considering K-State.
Justin, tell everybody where that demand is coming from, where the milling centers are in the United States and baking and things like that, where the draw is.
Flour milling is a global industry, and so there are job opportunities. There's K-State graduates throughout the world that are involved with flour milling and baking and feed science. What makes it pretty unique is the opportunities across from the West Coast to East Coast, where these students can either spend an internship, get exposure to the industry, get an idea what's the best fit for them, if it's the chemistry, the lab, the testing side of things, the quality control. Is it the processing, hands-on, more engineering side of things in a daily processing plant, or maybe even on the management side where it may be lead into sourcing or packaging or all other aspects that are involved. So it's such a wider range, Aaron, of different facets within all degree programs within grain science. But you had the opportunity to meet with Marshall Stewart. I think you're going to be talking a little bit more about the K-State 105 plan. But when you think about that land grant mission, that direct impact to Kansas, it's hard to draw up something that's more impactful than the Department of Grain Science and its direct impact to the state of Kansas. When you think we have expanding baking and ingredient suppliers that are located right in the state of Kansas, feeding side, from the feed side, Kansas is one of the largest feeding states in the United States. As far as pet food manufacturing from the state economy side of things, Kansas is the largest pet food manufacturer in the United States. From flour milling, I think they rank Kansas as in the top 3 of flour milling capacity. In my mind, I think Kansas, with the new protein facility that's going up in Phillipsburg and the expansions that are happening at existing flour mills in the state of Kansas, I believe Kansas actually has the largest flour mill capacity in the United States. And so that direct impact the department has from not only creating opportunities for students to get career pathways for Kansas students, but then that direct impact that the Department of Grain Science has on teaching students to get out and involved in some of the leading economic drivers in the state of Kansas. It's really, as a department, just a perfect test case for what the land grant mission is supposed to be fulfilling. And this new facility with the Global Innovation Center with the state of Kansas support and stakeholder support and industry support just gives it a real chance to elevate that department, that impact, and really expand that student experience and bringing in new students to really be a part of it. It's an exciting time for the Department of Grain Science and K-State. And Dr. Dogan, we really appreciate your leadership and your work that you're doing. I know you have to wear many hats because as we're really focused on the Department of Grain Science right now and your industry engagement, and you're filling as the interim department head role now, but you're also still teaching and you're also still involved with IGP, and it's been a big task, but we do appreciate all that you've been doing. But I don't know if you wanted to expand on some of the other things besides the teaching that you're involved in and your responsibilities as you've had the interim department head position.
Far and the most, I guess, I can tell, my favorite task is being a teacher. I do like teaching, and teaching is where I get my energy. You list the fact, I have many things to do and it's a very busy day every day. But when I feel like I'm consuming all my energy and I have no drop of energy left, I go to the classroom, re-energize, and come back. So this semester, for instance, I teach pneumatics. That's one of the favorite subjects. Challenging students with, our program, as we mentioned several times, is a science-based but also very hands-on, which is true for milling, baking, and feed, all of them. So one thing that I like to do as a teacher is, yes, we have hands-on experiences, that we can demonstrate in our Mill Saiwan labs, our activities in Halras Mill. But students need to also know whys and hows. This is one of my favorite, way to contribute to the program. When I go to the classroom, I challenge the students with all these hard questions, like all equations and things like that. Basically telling them or helping them to understand we have some practical decisions that we always make and conduct the business in a certain way. But then my fun part is teaching them why, and going through some, exercises that they may not like because it involves some math, right? But then the fact is, from those relationships, understanding the cause and effect in a given process, it clicks. And when it clicks, when you see the spark in their eyes, that is the mission completion for me. So that's the teaching part. Like, I can do this every day, 7/24. No, that's my fun. But in terms of the interim, yes, most of other responsibilities that or the mission I have is connecting or rebuilding or strengthening the relationships that we have with the industry, engaging with the prospective students and their parents, make the program guides so up to date and clear for those incoming students to understand how it really fits into their interest areas as the seniors in high schools and places like that. And we have IGP that is heavily involved in conducting short courses and specialized training opportunities at the professional setting, non-degree seeking manner. So those are also great areas for us to explore more. For instance, after IGP, AIB, we know there is a need in the industry, in the baking industry, to be able to send their employees and get those, advanced training in the baking area. So this is one example of, what we are trying to do in IGP this year, different than earlier years.
Well, the fundraising is certainly one that is being tasked for everybody that's involved with the new center. I think in total the new center is going to be just under $210 million project. The big lift obviously is coming from Kansas State University and the state of Kansas, but that effort to get out and get private dollars raised from industry, from allied industry, and then also from individuals and corporations to get us over the hump. It's a task that you're working with K-State Foundation, the College of Ag on, that industry engagement, but also as stakeholders, Kansas Wheat has made a contribution along with our commodity partners across the state that's contributing to this effort. That's a big piece of the new vision that President Linton has laid forth. It's really making this exciting, but we still have a little ways to go to get to that finish line. Dr. Dogan is taking the lead on that, working with industry as well as K-State Foundation and College of Ag with Dean Minton.
And I think, Justin, it's important to note that the message you talked about, fulfilling the land-grant mission and how Grain Science does that. I know K-State's going back to the Kansas legislature to advocate for more support for that. And, of course, to us, it makes sense to meet the needs of the industry here in Kansas is certainly important. Julia, I think it's certainly easy for us to tell your passion for this department that you're part of, and Grain Science is certainly lucky to have you. We wish you all the best moving forward with this new center. Any final thoughts for us today?
I would like to thank you for the opportunity, and I also want to add, as you mentioned, this is a big project, $210 million. Yes, fundraising is going, and we do really appreciate, everything, all of the contributions that we are receiving from the industry, and we have maybe 1/3 of that amount to be fulfilled in near future. But all the support that we have been getting already is very encouraging and energizing us to do better and keep our connection with the industry as they are, or even stronger, and to maintain this long-term relationships in the new building as well.
Dr. Dogan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
My thanks to Julia Dogan and Justin Gilpin for joining us on this episode of the Wheats on Your Mind podcast. If you have questions for our guests or ideas for future podcasts, please contact us at podcast@kswheat.com. I'm Aaron Harries. Thanks for listening.